One of the most important principles in the Bible is the faithfulness of God. And it's a theme throughout the Scriptures, teaching us that we should never be envious of the wicked or fearful of our circumstances or angry with God because the way our life is turning out. In fact, one of the major scriptures that I think of when I think of the faithfulness of God is found in Psalm 37 verse 25, where David wrote, "I was young and now I am old, and I have not seen the righteous forsaken, nor his descendants begging bread." I believe that Lifepoint Church is full of people just like that who have lived for the Lord for decades. And if they look back over their life, they would say, if you ask them, have you ever been forsaken by the Lord? I believe every one of them who are continuing to serve the Lord would say, maybe I was unfaithful to the Lord, but the Lord was never unfaithful to me. I believe that's been my experience. I have experienced the faithfulness of God. Now, I don't mean that He's always worked out my circumstances according to the plan that I gave Him. In fact, usually my plans were kind of boring. I wanted a quick fix, and I wanted it now. But I always found that the Lord led me down a dark road where there were circumstances and scenery that was very scary. In fact, I believe most of the time He has allowed me to experience pain and even a sense of loss. And when I didn't think that my prayers were being answered, but I continued to pray anyway, the Lord would always come through. He has never, ever failed me yet. One such time was when Adam was born. I remember I was there in the delivery room and how that they laid him on his back on the sheet. And I could see immediately that there was something not right. I could see the bottoms of his feet while he was laying on his back. I thought maybe he's a big baby and he's crumpled up in the womb and maybe he'll straighten out and his legs will straighten out and his feet will straighten out over time. But in about an hour, the doctors came to me and they said, "We want to give you some news. Your son has been born with club feet." In fact, they used the term bilateral club feet. Bilateral means that in two ways, both downward and inward, his feet were deformed. And to complicate it a little bit more, there was an additional deformity which is common in club feet, and that is protruding heels. And the heel bone is not down in the pad of the heel, it's actually up in the ankle. And I didn't know what to think. I didn't know what club feet were. I didn't know anyone that had club feet. The nurse said, "We're going to do everything that we can, Mr. Shaw." And I didn't know what that meant. I went home from the hospital that day and I thought, is my son going to be crippled? Is he going to be in a wheelchair? I knew that it was a very severe situation of club feet. His condition was severe. Right away, they begin to do the treatments. In fact, that very next day, they begin to take his feet and twist them and bend them. And he came home from the hospital with casts on both his feet. Immediately, I began to do what I know to do, and that is to go to prayer. Every single Sunday, I would march to the front with my infant boy, and we would anoint him with oil, and the pastor and the church would pray, and I wanted a miracle. I knew that God was faithful, and I wanted to see God heal him. But it didn't seem like anything happened. We went back for additional appointments. In fact, literally dozens and dozens of appointments. 1 month stretched into 2 months, and then it stretched into a year, and then into 2 years. And I was believing the Lord that He would come through for me, that He would heal my son, and that his feet would be normal. But it seemed like God wasn't doing anything. It was just the medical profession, and no change, no drastic change was coming. And I remember toward the end of this process, in fact, the doctor said, "This will be the last time that you have to bring Adam to me." And Adam was now a toddler. And I kind of was a little afraid. I thought, what are we going to do? We've been bringing him week after week and month after month for nearly 2 years, and now all of this is going to stop. And I remember that last appointment, how that we were standing there and the doctor opened the door and in filed all of these young adults wearing white lab coats, and it was obvious that they were the university students that were in the medical program. And the doctor began to explain to the students that he was mentoring. He held up the feet of Adam and he showed them the x-rays, and he said, this is how we wish they would all turn out. This is one of our success stories. And the students looked at one another, and they looked at the doctor, and they looked at the x-rays, and they whispered to one another. And I remember the feeling that I had in that very moment, because in that moment I realized that God had heard my prayer, that God was faithful to me, that God had performed a miracle in the feet of Adam. He just didn't take the plan that I gave him. He chose a different road. He took the long road, and looking back, I realized how important that was for me, because if the Lord had have given me an instant miracle and an instant healing, we would have talked about it and probably still talked about it. But the lessons that I would have learned by waiting on the Lord and being strengthened by God and continuing to seek God and put my trust in the prayers of the saints, I would not have experienced that. And I would not have experienced what it means to trust in the faithfulness of God. I'm here to tell you that all through Lifepoint Church, there are stories similar to that, where there are people who have lived for God for decades, and God has been faithful to them. I believe this is such an important and critical point. I believe our faith is founded upon this single principle, that we know that God will be faithful. That's why we dedicate to Him. That's why we serve Him. That's why we wait for heaven, because we believe there is a heaven coming, and there is a reward coming for our commitment and our service to the Lord. Settle that issue in your mind. Come to that conclusion in your life, that whatever happens, no matter what takes place, that as long as you're seeking Him and you're serving Him and you're waiting on Him, that He will never forsake you, that He will always be faithful to you. We're going to take a few moments and go around the room and discuss the questions that I prepared for you. I'm excited to hear some of the great stories from the saints of God of how God has been faithful to each and every one of you. If you haven't experienced the faithfulness of God, don't give up, because this lesson doesn't happen on the short road. It happens on the long road. I'm looking forward to a great Connect Sunday. God bless you. Thanks for listening. I appreciate it so much.